Good morning all, it's Postbag and this is a tiny little one from China. Let's open it up and see what we have. It's a teeny tiny little module. So this is the AD9833 Programmable Waveform Generator and it's absolutely tiny, not much bigger than my middle finger. Compare it with the AD9850 that I've been playing with recently and you can see there's a huge size difference. There are a lot of pins on this 9850 module, and that's because you can load this either parallel or with serial data. This is serial SPI interface only. So a quick comparison of the datasheets. The AD9850 is a complete DDS synthesizer, 125 MHz quartz crystal. That's this little crystal module here. Now this one's described as a low power, and they've specified the milliwatts there, 2.3 volt to 5.5 volt, programmable waveform generator. And it is relevant that they talk about this as a waveform generator rather than a DDS synthesizer. The 9850 could only generate sine waves using a sine ROM and this 10-bit DAC. Now you could get square waves out of it by feeding the analog output to the analog in of this comparator and then taking the output of that as your square wave, but this is an entirely separate module. Now on the other hand, the AD9833 can generate sinusoidal, triangular and square wave outputs, and they're programmable through the digital interface. You don't have to change the hardware, you can actually get the microcontroller to change the wave shape. Now I want to use this for music, so I'm probably not going to go much above about 10 kilohertz. So this 0 MHz to 12.5 MHz output frequency range is way beyond what I need. But wait a minute, 25 MHz reference clock and a 12.5 MHz output frequency, which is a sine wave. That's going to be a pretty poor sine wave when it's half the frequency of the main reference clock. Now one of my concerns for my music experiments is frequency resolution. Here it says with a 25 MHz clock, and this little clock module on here is, or crystal module is the 25 MHz crystal, we get a resolution of 0.1 Hertz, which might be a bit coarse for what I want to do. But if you put on a 1 MHz clock, so I'd have to change that little module, which would be quite tricky, the AD9833 can be tuned to a 0.004 Hertz resolution. Now that's much better. So here's the functional block diagram. We've got an SPI interface down here, clock and data, but there's also this F-sync control, so it's like an additional line which you have to take into account. That just, when you trigger that, it updates the frequency. We've got frequency registers, phase registers. Now here's the sine ROM, which will have a sine wave written into it, but you can bypass it by switching this multiplexer to the input or the output. If you switch it to the input, you will get a triangle wave because that's what comes out of this phase accumulator. So I now need to spend a little bit of time getting to understand this functional block diagram, this control word and which bits need to be set to what to get a sine wave coming out of here, and then also on the other side understanding the frequency and phase registers, and what else have we got? Mainly frequency and phase registers, I think, trying to understand how all this stuff works. And then I need to fix this little module. Fortunately it has two convenient mounting holes somewhere onto my little penny organ here, so that by pressing the notes of the organ I can produce musical tones from this little sine wave generator. Now eventually I want probably 4 of these things so that the musical keyboard can be 4-note polyphonic. And then my eventual aim is to turn this into a chord organ where when pressing one of these notes, instead of getting a single note, you get the complete chord of G or the complete chord of F, or E or D. No idea what this is going to do or how it's going to work, but that's my plan. So that's the Analog Devices AD9833 Programmable Waveform Generator. Let's have a look at where that came from. And so this item came from eBay. It's the AD9833 Programmable Microprocessors Sine Square Wave. Don't forget triangle DDS signal generator module, $6.69. That's £4.38. Free postage. And that came from this seller, Smooth Dealer. Cheerio.